Able to seal him. Here's the pass. Oh, what a catch! Leaping into the air and pulling it down is T. Higgins. Burrow facing pressure. Goes over the top. Wide open is Chase. And he splits the defenders for the touchdown. The Cincinnati Kid. Hubbard's got a convoy. Chased by Andrews. At the 30, the 20, he will score.
Hooday, Bengal fans. He is Mon. I am Jake. This is the Bengals Pulse, the heartbeat of our Cincinnati Bengals. Mon, it is Wednesday. We have left that Cleveland Brown game in the past. It's over with. I love Joe Burrow had his presser today. He talked about being 1-0, going 1-0 every week. I have used that a lot as a head coach with my teams. I love that philosophy, and Coach Taylor's got them thinking the same thing. So the Cleveland Brown game is over. Let's forget about it, Bengal fans. I know it's hard. It was very hard to watch. But now we have to focus on the Baltimore Ravens. It does not get any easier for our Cincinnati Bengals, Mom.
Hey, Jake, how are you?
Good.
All of our Bengal Pulse listeners, I have a dog right here, a puppy that's barking a lot. I apologize. I'll do the best I can. She's a handful. Thank God my wife and daughter are taking care of her right now. Let's put the game. Let's put the game behind us. You're right. It was one of those. It was ugly. I said it 50 times last week. It was an ugly game. Let's move on. It doesn't get any easier. The Ravens play the Bengals tough. It's hard to score on that defense. Unfortunately for the Ravens, I want the Bengals to beat them, but I want the Bengals to beat them as a healthy team because the Ravens are just ravaged with injuries. I don't think there's an NFL team that has more awful luck when it comes to injuries than the Baltimore Ravens. It's shocking, actually. It really is. But let's get ready and talk about that game. And we're going to let all of our fans know about what's happening with us in Cincinnati coming up this weekend.
Mon, the Bengals Pulse is very busy this weekend. We are going to be making our rounds all over the Cincinnati area. It's going to be a lot of fun. But we'll talk about that toward the end of the show. Right now, let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens. Before we do, Mon, I do want to just talk very briefly about Joe Burrow's presser. I don't know if you saw it today. Joe Burrow, the big news coming out of practice, besides the injury report, obviously Joe Burrow's new haircut. I don't know if you saw the presser, Mom, but it was really funny. A very lighthearted Joe Burrow. Who one of the reasons I think we all love him is not only is he such a great football player, but he's really a great dude. And you really know the character of somebody when they can, I don't want to say make fun of themselves, but hold themselves accountable in a humorous way, I guess is a good way to put it. And that's what Joe did today. They asked Joe, when do you know when it's a good time to get a haircut? He said, after you have a game like I did on Sunday. I think this Bengals team, as bad as it was on Sunday, I do think that this team is ready to move forward. And we've seen this in the past. We talked about it after the game on Monday. This Bengals organization has got that mindset of moving on to the next week and forgetting about that, not having that long-term memory, which hurts a lot of football teams. But Joe had his presser. Coach Taylor had his presser. Obviously, another big news, La'el Collins is released. It saves the Bengals a little money in cap. I think when he did get released, I was thinking, okay, here comes the T. Higgins extension. We heard the news, though, a couple of days ago that is no longer going to happen during the regular season. But what do you think about this La'el Collins cut? Is this something for the Bengals to prepare for the 2024 season, having some more money to roll over, or is this and somehow going to free up some space to maybe get this T. Higgins thing done.
I think if you take a step back and look at it, we were obviously a little upset about it. He's quality depth. When healthy, he's a good player. He struggled some last year, had that chronic back issue. Towards the middle of the season, he started playing a lot better. That whole offensive line did. That's what sparked that 8-10 game, 8-game win streak during the regular season, including the playoffs, made it 10. He played a lot better. Unfortunately, when he injured that knee, I think it was in the Patriot game, it wasn't just the ACL, it was multiple ligaments. And we got to take a step back. With his history, with his back, when you tear major ligaments, I mean multiple, we got to really think about it. It's going to be hard for him to come in and be a productive player. It might take him 6, 8, 10 weeks to get where he's at because he tore his ACL late in the season last year. I think the Bengals freed up some money. Last I saw, I think they only had $4 million after the Burrow extension.
Yeah, now, it was like 4.4 or something.
They're up to about $11 million right now. I think some of the people on Twitter, Goodberry mentioned a good point. If the Bengals did want to pick up a player later on in the season, they have a little more flexibility to do that. Trade deadline, maybe somebody that's tanking would get rid of one of their players, a tight end potentially, or another offensive lineman of some sort. Also, some of that money can obviously be rolled over until next year because it frees up $7 million next year also because he was under contract for the 2024 season. So that gives the Bengals will have some salary cap space, even with this huge contract extension with Joe Burrow. So, yeah, it stinks. I was an LC fan. I was so excited when they signed him last year. It's unfortunate. But, that's like I said, the Bengals are going to have good players they have to let go. And I hope he's healthy and he can latch on with the team, maybe come back to us at a lower price.
And maybe the Bengals feel very comfortable about Jonah Williams, right? I mean, I think you have to look at it in that manner too. Is you have a guy who's making between $7 and $8 million right now that might not be playing till week 12. That's a lot of money sitting there for a guy that maybe doesn't even come back and start. So an understandable move. Again, I think we're all a little nervous because right now you have Smith and you have Carmen as the two backups right now, and that's a little scary. But I think that there is still a chance maybe they go out and get somebody at a lower price. Isn't Dalton Reasoner, isn't he still out there?
He is still out there, and he is the darling of Twitter. Apparently he had some good PFF numbers last year. Everybody is really talking about him. He hasn't signed with any team since free agency.
Right.
There's
Unusual,
32
right?
NFL teams. Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know what's going on there. I'm not saying he's a bad player. Obviously, reputable, good scores. I mean, you can say what you want about PFF. Some people hate him. Some people love him. They were respectable grades. He has started multiple games for the Broncos. The Broncos had a great rushing attack. For some reason, he hasn't signed with another team. I don't know why. I mean, if he's that good of a player, teams are starving for offensive linemen. They really are. They're starving for offensive linemen, and it just hasn't worked out for him.
And one thing, too, I want to bring up this one point to Eric, our producer, made a really good point, and that is that this whole deal, this LC getting cut situation, this whole deal, you're not only freeing up money with him, but possibly if the Bengals are not bringing Jonah back next year, that's another $12 million on top of the $7 million. Now you're starting to really free up some space to maybe sign T. Higgins after the season is over and still be able to afford Jamar Chase and still DJ Reader sitting out there. So a lot of things that the Bengals could do. Obviously, you and I both know, being Bengal fans for over 40 years, this team loves to roll money over to the following year. They love it.
The one thing about that, LC is actually on the books for next year. So that's a true $7 million savings. Jonah's playing on his option right now this year. So he's not technically on the books next year. But the Bengals will have 40 plus, 50 plus $50 million in salary cap space. This adds to it $7 million, but also the rolling over. So the Bengals are technically going to save upwards $10, $12 million by releasing LC. And you add that on top of the other, I think they're in the $40 million range in available cap space next year. I may be off on that, maybe off, maybe a little bit more than that, but they're going to have some money to make moves, and don't forget, a few years down the road, they could always restructure some things and free up some money from Joe's contract. Other teams do that, and the Bengals have started doing things that other teams are doing. Bengals have always had their own style of doing things with salary cap. They're changing, so we'll see how that goes.
Well, let's talk about this Joe Burrow, because the numbers came out on the actual contract itself. Eric, if you could put those up there, that would be awesome. This deal, Mon, is just you have to be impressed with the way the Bengals do these contracts, right? I mean, they do a really good job of making sure that it's beneficial for the player and for the organization, not just throwing a bunch of crazy money out there like the Cleveland Browns did, to use them as an example. But here we go. Thank you, Eric. Here is the contract itself, Mon. Again, 5 years, $275 million. That's on top of the other 2 years as well. But let's look at this 5-year extension, Mon. And what jumps out to me is all this money, all this guaranteed money that Joe is going to be getting. But if you take a look at this contract, you can see that the signing bonus being just a hair under $40 million. Not a bad signing bonus, Mon. Average salary right around $55 million. And then the guaranteed money, this is what I'm talking about, is $146 million, Mon, guaranteed at the signing. Crazy, crazy money. And really, again, we talked about it when Joe signed this thing. I think all the old, I don't even know what to call it, but all the old news about the Cincinnati Bengals not spending money on guys and being cheap. Look at this thing, Mon. You can throw that out the window.
Yeah, it's. I'm just looking at these numbers. It's astronomical. It's
crazy.
It's unbelievable. I'm just for giggles here. I'm looking at dead cap space. If the Bengals wanted to cut him a couple years from now, if they cut him in 2025, which will never happen, guys, $105 million in dead cap space.
Yeah, that's never going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen. But just an unbelievable breakdown. It's a complex contract, a lot of moving parts there. Good for the Cincinnati Bengals. I did read they had to put $100 million in escrow. You said it last week. You talked about winning, and we mentioned something about winning is good for business. Bengals have money to pay these contracts, and don't be surprised if we have a wide receiver that's the highest paid wide receiver in football next year, and that's Jamar Chase.
Oh, we definitely will. So let's look right here at this is just the base salary, Mon, in 2024. Joe's going to be getting right around 10 to 11 million. And then 8 million on top of that. 2025, it jumps up to 25, 26, exactly the same as 25. 27, it jumps up to 27 with 8 on top of that. And again, that is yearly, the money increasing yearly. But again, the Bengals did such a great job with this contract, Mom, throwing a bunch of that guaranteed money up front, which we know does not really hit the cap as much as other contracts might. So again, Mom, when you look at this contract, it's just done so well, the way the Bengals put this thing together and really giving themselves some room. I think a lot of people were like, oh, Joe Burrow said he was going to take this good home discount contract to help make sure everybody is signed. He really did. I mean, this is a good contract for him and a very good contract for the Bengals. You can see Eric highlighted in 2028, he gets a total of $53 million. And then in 2029, $68 million. Just unbelievable hits.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing about that in 2028, 29, that's a lot of money, Jake. You're absolutely right. But the salary cap at that time could be 400 million.
That's right.
And so, the percentage of cap hit for Joe Burrow's contract is technically going to go down because the salary cap is going to go up so much. Yeah, his salary is going to go up, but it might. Yeah, I don't know percentage wise, but it's going to be about the same. Maybe go down a little bit. It's money they had to pay. It's the going rate for an elite quarterback. Joe Burrow is the highest paid quarterback. That might only last a year. Somebody else could take over next year, a Mahomes restructure of some sort. But I do like the way it's spread out. It's a 5-year contract extension. We all know that. But he had 2 years remaining on his existing contract, so he's here for another 7. So by the Bengals using that last year of his rookie deal and then picking up that option, it's allowed to spread everything out. It's a 7-year, $310 million contract. So, that helps out with the dynamics and the breakdown of all that money. And guess what? The Bengals are locked in with him for 7 years. That's what they wanted. They wanted that security of having their franchise quarterback for another 7 years. Guess what? He could end up probably signing another 3-year contract at that. So, it's good to have him. We know the foundation, the core, the rock to this franchise is here to stay. Now, the Cincinnati Bengals need to continue to find parts, missing these pieces. It's going to be harder to keep some of our players, but the Bengals are always good at managing their salary cap. They're going to make it work. They have to continue drafting well, and I think they will. They've been on a good streak, and I think it's going to continue.
And really, if you look at this contract, Mon, I think the other thing that jumps out to me besides the guaranteed money up front. Again, this is a lot of numbers, guys. Mon and I are not experts when it comes to breaking down contracts, but I do know this, that Joe Burrow is getting a lot of money up front, and there's really not a big cap hit until 2028. 2028 and 2029 are the real big cap hits of this deal. So again, the Bengals, knowing that they have DJ Reader, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, possibly a Tyler Boyd. They have some big contracts, maybe even Cheeto. They got some big contracts coming up here, Mon. And they have structured Joe Burrow's contract to where we don't see big cap hits until the very end of this thing. Really, after the 5-year extension is when we really start seeing the cap hits. So again, bravo to the Cincinnati Bengals for putting this thing together. It's really they did a good job. Let's move on. We know Joe Burrow is going to be a Bengal for the next 7 years, and that is exciting. Let's move on to the Baltimore Ravens, Mon. And again, this football team. Let's start with the injury report. The injury report from today. The big news, obviously, is Joseph Asai was in shells and helmet today, Mon. He practiced with the team. Cam Sample did not practice with the team. Eric is going to throw that injury report up right there. So you can see Joseph Asai, he was limited, but he did practice. The only guy on the 53 that did not practice today, Mon, is Cam Sample. And again, not really seeing it during the game, but Cam got rolled up on that Dax Hill interception by DJ Reader, got rolled up on and obviously not practicing today. But, man, that would be nice to get Joseph Asai back. You can see Chris Evans, a little bit of a hamstring issue, and then, of course, Joe Burrow being full. But let's look at this Baltimore Ravens injury report. You said it earlier in the beginning of the show, Mon. Look at some of those names. Those are all starters. Those are 5 starters, not to mention J.K. Dobbins, of course, tearing that that was his Achilles, right? He tore his Achilles tendon, kind of like Aaron Rodgers, right? Same injury as Aaron Rodgers. So J.K. Dobbins out for the year. Once again, that guy has got the worst luck. But look at those names, Mon. Mark Andrews, Marlon Humphrey, Linderbaum, Stanley, Williams. And Williams being really, I think, the worst on that list right now. But what jumps out to you there?
Those are all good players. That's what really stands out. That is absolutely brutal. Jeff Hobson does a great job covering for Bengals.com. Well, the equivalent for the Baltimore Ravens sent out a snide tweet today. can the Ravens ever be healthy to face the Bengals? And he
God.
basically, and he
Here
was,
we go.
Cincinnati making excuses. I don't know how the game's
Here we
going to
go.
shake out, but here we're going to talk about that later. I think the Bengals are going to win. But we'll talk about that later. That's a brutal list. Mark Andrews, I expect him to play. They held him out last week. Humphreys, Linderbaum, Stanley, Williams. I don't know. Linderbaum and Stanley were getting tests. Williams, the pectoral could be out. It depends on the severity. Sometimes, at best case, that's 8 weeks. Worst case, obviously, it's the end of the year. That's going to be brutal for them. They still have a lot of very good, formidable players. I think when you see that injury list right there, I think I think we know what the Ravens are going to do. The Ravens are going to do everything in their power to pressure Joe Burrow because their secondary's hurt. Their best players are back there that are really banged up. Williams is really good. Humphreys, we know he's good. They're going to put a lot of pressure on Joe Burrow, trying to keep him uncomfortable because they know they're exposed back there. Concerning our guys there, Cam Sample really played well last week. Not many Bengals did. He played good. We're allowed to bring up practice squad players 3 times during the year. I wouldn't be surprised if Gunther comes up, potentially play 1 game. He'll revert back to the practice squad, especially if Sample can't play. We'll see how that shakes out. But that's an ugly injury list for the Baltimore Ravens.
It is. It's brutal, like you said, and for that gentleman that writes for the Baltimore Ravens, let's go back and look at the injury report when we played you the last 2 weeks of the season. Well, the last regular season game and the playoff game. Let's look and see how many Bengals players were out for the year, including our best corner, including 2 of our best offensive linemen. I don't want to hear any of that crybaby nonsense from the Baltimore Ravens. The Bengals were so banged up at the end of the year last year. Get out of here with that nonsense. All right, so again, you can see that Bengals, knock on wood, Mon, rolling into this game pretty healthy. And we talked about it after the Browns game. Even though they went out there and beat the hell out of each other, really the Bengals come out fairly healthy. Again, the Cam Sample thing we'll have to wait and see. But if Joseph Asai is able to play in this football game, even if he's able to play 25 or 30 snaps, Mon, that will make a huge difference because he is one of those athletic guys that can run around and chase Lamar Jackson around the field. Let's look at this Baltimore Ravens roster, though, and look at their stats and see kind of where they sit right now. Because, Mon, you and I, obviously, we are – just to let you guys know, when we watch the games at Mon's house, we have the Bengals obviously on the big screen, and then we have another screen right next to it that's basically the red zone so we can keep up with all the other divisional games. And, Mon, they struggled against the Houston Texans at home. Now, that score doesn't really show the entire game as a whole, but the game, some of the game that you and I watched, they struggled against the Houston Texans. Lamar Jackson struggled against the Houston Texans. Look at those numbers, Mon. 17 of 22, $169, no touchdowns, 1 interception, was sacked 4 times, Mon. Again, this Houston Texans team gave Baltimore everything they had in Baltimore. And, I think really when you look at this division, this AFC North division, all 4 teams really looked bad. I mean, even though the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens won, they both looked terrible. So this division as a whole, it's early on, obviously, but Lamar Jackson, rushing totals there. You see J.K. Dobbins before he got hurt. He did have a touchdown. Justice Hill had 2 touchdowns, Mon, but he averaged 1 yard a carry. Again, just not very big numbers for this Baltimore Ravens offense. And I'll tell you, I think that bids well for the Cincinnati Bengals, Mon.
See that stat right there, 32 carries for 110 yards, 3.4 yards per carry. I'll take that. I think the Baltimore Ravens, with their injuries, especially in the defensive backfield, they want to limit possessions, take possessions away from the Cincinnati Bengals. I know the Ravens have a new offensive coordinator that wants to open things up. I think the Ravens are going to go a little bit old school and try to run the ball, especially with Lamar. try to get him up to 80, 90 yards rushing as a quarterback. They want to get first downs, turn up that running game, turn up, just eat up the clock and limit possessions so the Cincinnati Bengals can't come out there and potentially score points. We cannot have another game like we did last week where we only had the ball for 24, 25 minutes. We can't do it. I think that the Browns had 18, 19 more offensive plays than we did. We got to make sure we get them off the field, make Lamar pass the ball. DJ Reader, we need a big game from you. Defensive line, Tapau, all those guys. We need to shut down that running attack. Make Lamar pass the ball. Make him pass the ball.
Agreed. Throw BJ Hill in there as well. If you'll go down, Eric, let's take a look at this Baltimore receiving core that was so talked about. Zay Flowers obviously now has become the major target for Lamar Jackson. He had 9 catches for 78 yards. And then after that, Mon, it really dips. Odell Beckham, 2 catches. Bateman, 3 catches. Again, J.K. Dobbins out of the backfield, 2 catches. I mean, again, this is not really a vaunted passing attack by the Baltimore Ravens. Like you said, if the Bengals can just stop the run, I think this is a game that the Bengals could very well win and win handily if they can just stop the run against the Baltimore Ravens. But jump over to the defense really quick, Mon. This Baltimore Ravens defense is nasty. They are very good. They are a very athletic defense that runs around and make plays. We saw it last year in 3 football games. Roquan Smith obviously played so well against the Bengals last year. He finished with 16 tackles, had one of those sacks. Patrick Queen, the other linebacker. You see a lot of tackles from the linebacker, which means that it could mean a couple things, but one thing it could mean is that the Houston Texans were able to get to the second level of the defense, and if the Bengals are able to do that, that's not such a bad thing.
Yeah, Roquan Smith he's a dude. Patrick Queen, they are loaded. Their safety Kyle Hamilton's a good player. They are going to bring the heat. They're going to come after Joe. This is where Zach Taylor needs to adapt and modify that offense he has. I know they go empty a lot. If they do bring the house, somebody's going to be open. Hopefully Joe has enough time to do that, but I don't want him to take unnecessary shots. Let's get that running game going. Somebody, if they want to blitz, maybe somebody can pop one, get a 30, 40-yard run, potentially get, Joe at least 20 carries. I know I just mentioned that the Ravens are going to run the ball quite a bit to try to limit possessions for the Bengals. Let's return the favor. Let us do that also. We ran the ball pretty well last week. In the first half, Joe Mixon was averaging over 5 yards per carry. Then it tailed off at the end there. When the game got away, the Bengals had to pass in those horrible conditions. Let's have some good balanced football. Let's attack these guys. We know they're going to bring the heat. Great players, good defensive line. I don't think they have an elite pass rusher like Myles Garrett. And who's the other defensive end for the Browns? What's his name?
Zadarius Smith.
Yeah, we're not going to see a pass rush like that. But, Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith will blitz a lot. We got to be ready for it. I expect them to put a lot of heat on Joe.
Or just let Joe go out there and throw for 525 yards again. I'll take that too.
Yeah.
I think, Mon, we have come to the point as Bengal fans where we are looking when we play a team that week, we are looking directly at the pass rush. And the Baltimore Ravens do not have a pass rush like what we saw last week. Again, you can see the sacks are coming from the linebackers, not so much that front. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing for the Cincinnati Bengals because obviously, you have Joe Burrow back there. And if he's got some time, I really think that the Bengals can get this offense cranking. And I think Joe Burrow, I think the Baltimore Ravens are playing a pissed off Cincinnati Bengals offense that feels that they were embarrassed last week against the Cleveland Browns.
I agree. Playing at home is going to be huge. As I said earlier in the week, the Bengals have 9 home games. At worst, we got to be 7-2. at best, 9-0. Paycor Stadium is a hard out. Playing at home is going to be huge. Baltimore, their offense, they have weapons. It's probably the best wide receiver core I've ever seen for the Ravens. They got a lot of potential there. And, of course, Andrews. If Andrews can't play this week, that would be a big-time plus. I don't see that happening. Cincinnati's defense has really got to step up. We got to play good complementary football, and our offense needs to score more than 3 points, and I think they will.
Yeah, and again, when you talk about Mark Andrews, you talk about the Bengal killer, right? I mean, he's a guy that the Bengals have struggled to stop ever since he's come into the league. Well, Mon, let's get, before we talk about what's going on with the Bengal Pulse this weekend in Cincinnati, let's pick these games, Mon. We only got 2 to pick because the Bengals play the Ravens and the Browns play the Steelers. Let's start with the Browns-Steelers game, Mon. I believe that's a Monday night game, if I'm not mistaken. The 1-0 Cleveland Browns versus the 0-1 Pittsburgh Steelers. Both teams did not look very good last week. Obviously, the Steelers getting crushed by the San Francisco 49ers at home, and the Cleveland Browns winning against the Bengals. But again, both teams looking very sloppy in that game, Mon. Who you got? Cleveland Browns, Pittsburgh Steelers.
Prime time in Pittsburgh is tough. They looked really bad. I'm telling you, that was a horrible pick on my part. I thought home opener in Pittsburgh, I thought they were going to lay the wood to the 49ers. It was the other way around. Prime time, back-to-back games in Pittsburgh. Absolutely no way the Pittsburgh Steelers lose 2 games in a row at their stadium, especially in prime time. Cleveland has a good defense. I'm not knocking their win against us last week. They laid the wood to us. You can't say anything else about it. I still think Pittsburgh's going to win. I have a score of 21-17 Pittsburgh over the Browns.
I have the Steelers winning 24-17. Again, I'm with you. I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers lose this football game. And I'll be honest with you, Mon. I'm going to say it again. I don't want to take anything away from the Cleveland Browns because they beat us. And there's nothing you can say. You can't talk about the weather. You can't talk about any of those circumstances, Joe not practicing. You can't talk about any of that. Cleveland Browns beat us. But the Cleveland Browns are not a good football team, Mon. They're really not. They look sloppy against us. Their offense is terrible. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to win this football game, and both teams are going to go 1-1 go into the season. Let's talk about the big one, though, the game that we will be at, the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Baltimore Ravens, Mon. I feel like we just played them last week because we played them, those last 2 games, week 17 and then that first playoff game. So I feel like we just played this team. But, Mon, who you got? Bengals, Ravens.
It's going to be, it's going to be a tough physical football game. I don't think it's going to be in doubt. I have the Bengals winning 24-16. I have the Ravens kicking some field goals with that great kicker of theirs. Cincinnati's going to win 24-16. They're going to wake up on offense. They're going to play good, solid defense, get a couple turnovers. Cincinnati home opener winning 24-16.
I have the Bengals winning 31-17, and I agree with you. I don't think the Bengals go 0-2. I think Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and the whole crew, the offensive line, I think they were embarrassed. I think this team bounces back big time, and I think they put 30 on the Baltimore Ravens. And I think we walk out of that stadium and walk out of the weekend with this division all knotted up once again. Everybody at 1-1, starting at a clean slate. I do want to say this, and again, I do not like to brag about being right. I hate it. I just feel like I'm forced to do it all the time, because I feel like I'm right all the time. I did pick the 49ers to absolutely crush the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we both picked the Bengals to win. That's a wash. We both picked the Ravens to win. That's a wash. I am up 1-0 on you. I'm keeping track this season because I feel like last year, I feel like I just blew you out of the water and I stopped keeping track of it. So this year I'm keeping track. I'm marking it on my wall. I am 1-0 right now against the great Mon Abalhassan.
I'm glad you are. I'm glad you are because I did. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to rewatch every prediction from last year, and I'm going to have an exact tally. Eric, get on that.
Well, let's bring our guy Eric in. He is going to give all of you guys the details on this weekend. And man, again, Eric, the Bengals Pulse making the rounds. We're going to be very busy. The three of us leave tomorrow, are driving up together. That should be. We need to get a Bengals Pulse bus. Listeners, can everybody throw in a little bit of coin here and get us maybe a Winnebago? We could throw the Bengal Pulse logo on it and just travel around the country to all the away games.
I mean,
that would be
ours
nice.
already got stripes. I can put stripes in the van, and we'll just put a Pulse logo. So a little backstory for the Pulse fans. I drove up to every home game last year, and a lot of those games my son and I drove up, and we left right after the game, and we drove all night. And
Crazy.
It took some Rockstar energy drinks. It took a lot of sunflower seeds, and it took probably some bad decisions. So this year we planned. We were very set. We were driving up on Friday. I'm like, this is great. We're going to do daytime driving. We're going to do this safe and responsible and fun. And then I get a text from Jake saying, "Let's go Thursday."
Let's go.
And then it hit me that, hey, we can do some things on Friday. So we're doing it again. It's not just the three of us. It's my son, Austin, as well. So we'll have a 14-year-old with us. So you won't see him and I in some of the late night bars with Mon and Jake, but you never know. We might be standing outside waiting for them to come out. So we're going to leave as soon as we can tomorrow. We're going to drive overnight. We're going to be safe. We promise. But we got some cool things that we're going to do. If you see us out and about and you say, hey, those are the guys from the Pulse, stop us. We'll say hi. You can argue with us. You can tell us when Jake's wrong and have a heated discussion on that. We're all for that. On Friday, our goal is to go to Dan Horn's Bengals Pep Rally. I believe that's at Wings and Rings in Fairfield from 3 to 6. So we're going to go there. We're hoping that we've got some good Bengals players there. We can geek out on being fans and get some pictures with them. And after we're done there, we're going to rush over to the Holy Grail to take in James Rapine's book signing. He's got a cool Bengals stats book that just came out. So we're hoping to get some autographs from him and see some of you out there. And then on Saturday, we're going to be over to Midwest Best Barbecue. Big supporters of the Wincinnati podcast network. So we're going to be there anywhere between 11 and noon. We're going to try and get our Uno wings and really do that up.
I'm so excited. I can't wait.
Yeah, and then we're going to drive over to the Pro Shop, hit that up, walk around downtown, and go to our favorite stop, the Yard House, hopefully late afternoon, catch some college football and get some gigantic pretzel and the huge turkey club that Jake likes. So, and then after that, we're going to walk around the banks, and we should be at the Holy Grail from anywhere from 6 to 10 o'clock to meet all the super fans that like to come out and talk Bengals football. So hoping to see you all there.
And the tailgates on Sunday also. We'll try to visit each one of them and then go to the game and celebrate a Bengal victory.
Yes, walk out of the stadium 1-1 again. You know, if everything works out as planned, this division basically starts out from scratch. Obviously, you know, the Steelers lost to an NFC foe, not as tough as the Bengals lost, but we can get this thing back to 1-1. We're in very good shape. That is another edition of the Bengals Pulse. As always, guys, check us out on all the awesome podcast platforms, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify. If you like this podcast, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. And always give Mon and I that 5-star review. We very much appreciate that. Follow him at The Fire Mon on Twitter. Follow me at Coach Jake Owens 9. Eric, what is your Twitter again? It's
eFlash88.
At eFlash88. Follow Eric as well. Follow the Bengals Pulse on Twitter at Bengals_Pulse9 on Instagram, the same without the at Bengals_Pulse9. And as always, check out all the awesome podcasts right here on the Wincinnati Podcast Network. He is Mon. He is Eric. You see, I'm not pointing this time because I always mess that up. Like the Brady Bunch thing. Let me see if I can get it. No, there's Mon. There's Eric. There we go. And I am Jake, guys. Thanks for listening. We will see you this weekend in the Natty. Make sure you stop us if you see us. We'd love to talk Bengals with all you guys. Thank you all for listening. Hoo-day, Bengal fans. We will see you at the stadium.
See you guys.